recently, and I don't know how your party is able to resolve that. The non-confirmation status of 3 ministerial nominees of the president. The withdrawal of Misheti from Kano State, and Malam Nasir El-Rufai's name that is not confirmed, that has generated it, and he's not the only one, Selokotete, and Mahmoud in Nasarawa State, Selokotete in Delta State. That's left your party members talking about that, and it's got some controversy. How are you able to resolve this? For example, Malam Nasir El-Rufai is saying that he's not interested any longer.
Has he told you that?
That is the information that we have.
I've not had a leader.
I'm reporting to you.
I've not had
that we have reported it here from his camp. We have it on good authority.
He's the one that is nominated, and I've not heard him saying that he's no longer interested in nomination. I've also not heard that Mr. President has withdrawn that nomination. There's a difference between an inchoate process and a complete process. As regards Malam Nasir El-Rufai, my very good sister Stella Okotete, and my very good brother Danladi from Taraba State, the process is still inchoate. It means that the National Assembly, Senate, had not turned down that nomination. They have not said, we're not going to confirm you. They said they want to look at certain issues that have been raised in certain security report. And of course, when on September 26, when the Senate resumes, we'll be able to know whether they will go ahead with the confirmation or whether they will not confirm. So it is too early for anybody to second guess what decisions the Senate will take as to confirmation of those nominees. And as to the withdrawal of nomination of equally my very good sister, Madam Shetty, is part of prerogative of Mr. President to decide whether the nomination should proceed forward or whether it should not be forward. Mind you, the question of appointment as minister is part of a political process. So if the political process, for instance, felt that maybe there are some other responsibilities that is supposed to be given to her, then she may be considered worthy of that responsibility. So as far as I'm concerned, you see, in politics, people make a lot of permutations, they make a lot of conjecture, which in fact is not reality. So as of today, as a matter of law, the nomination of those 3 ministerial nominees had not been rejected by the Nigerian Senate. There's no vote on it, either to reject or to accept it. So it's an inchoate process. In the instance, on the circumstance that Malam Nasir El-Rufai is no longer interested, what implication does that have for your party? I don't want to engage in hypothetical question.
This is not a hypothesis.
It's hypothesis.
You know the reason? Let me put the question.
I'm a legal practitioner.
Just a moment. Let me put the question. And you do not have the information. And I'm putting the information to you tonight.
I cannot. Then so your information.
Senator, if you allow me to land on my question, if you allow me to land on my question, I have, as a journalist, an information that Malam Nasir El-Rufai says he's no longer interested in that nomination. And I'm asking you as a party leader, where does that leave your party?
I say until I hear from the man in question, I don't believe what you have said. And I have the right to believe and not to believe what you have said. So as far as I'm concerned, the question of the purported, and I use the word purported advisedly, withdrawal of Malam Nasir is still in the realms of speculation. And as a trained legal practitioner, I cannot act on outright speculation, which is not grounded in concrete evidence. What you are saying is, in law, they call it hearsay evidence, because it's not come directly from the person that is affected. It's not an admissible evidence in the law court.
The president had nominated 48 persons, different from what former President Buhari did, 42. That's what President Buhari did. And at the point in our nation, that a lot of people thought that we need to have a slimmer government to cut cost of governance. What kind of light do you think this leaves your party, or Nigerians who would see your party, as you have a bloated cabinet at the federal level?
You see, Shehu, when you use the word bloated cabinet, it presupposes that there is a state of cabinet that is not bloated. That is, there is an agreed figure and number that's not bloated. Mind you, the Constitution provides that every state must have a nominee in the cabinet. So that means that by our architecture of our Constitution, there must be at least 37 ministers. If Abuja has a nominee, and for the first time in the history of this country, our President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, decided to nominate somebody from the FCT and the people of the FCT were happy. Then there may be some other peculiarities which may necessitate, because as of now, they have not even seen the kind of assignments that those ministers will be given, so you cannot be talking of overbloating. Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Government of Nigeria vested executive powers in the president at the federal level. And he said this will be exercised by him directly or through some other persons like ministers of the Federal Government of Nigeria. So I think you should keep your gunpowder, and those commentators, let us know what kind of structure, what kind of assignment, what kind of responsibility the 48 people already assembled by Mr. President, and we will do in that regard. Then secondly, now talking about cost of governance. Cost of governance go beyond number of ministers. I am also an advocate of cost of governance, but the question is it the salaries and allowances of ministers that is actually the issue of cost of governance? My answer is no. Tackling the issue of governance, and I believe Ajibola is going to work on it, is about looking at harmonizing structures of our MDAs and ensuring those with overlap functions and some of them possibly with obsolescence function are scrapped away so that we can have a trim agencies. The budget of those agencies are actually what occasion what we call the overbearing cost of governance. As at the 2021 budget, 2023 budget that was part of in making as a senator, when I was a senator, a serving senator, was about 8.5 billion or so goes to recurrent expenditure for the purpose of salaries and overhead. How much is the salary and overhead of the ministers? So even if you don't have any minister in Federal Government of Nigeria, it does not tackle the problem of overbearing cost of governance.
Senator, so I'll take the last part you spoke about now. And you look at it, we're talking about cost of governance, and I know that having served as a commissioner and as a senator, you understand in totality what it takes to serve in those offices. In Nigeria today, even as a minister of state, whatever ministerial appointment that you have, there are statutory personnel that work with you. And these people are human beings. They're going to be paid. They have their own offices. They're going to have their own allowances. You're traveling with them. You do everything. They get their overhead. They get their own running costs and all of that. These are some of the issues. And the question is whether or not we think that we deserve them or we need them. But it's the fact that can the nation, with the state of our economy, bear those kind of costs? Isn't it a good time for us to tighten our belt? That is exactly the language coming from the executive at the moment.
Sure, I agree with you. We need to tighten our belts, but we must do so with empirical data, not with speculation. I've told you that, if my memory serves me right, that the recurrent expenditure in the 2023 budget is about 8.5 or 8.7 billion. No, that's about 0.8. About 0.87 trillion. That's 870 billion. Of what fraction of that goes to the ministers and their aides and retinue of aides that you have mentioned? It's less than 2.5 or 5%, and that is statistics. So what I'm saying is that if you want to talk about cost of governance, it's not about ministers, it's not about special assistant to minister, it's about looking at the architecture of government, about looking at the MDAs that we have and those agencies with overlapping function, some of them whose usefulness, for instance, have been expended, then they'll be removed so that we want to streamline. And that definitely will affect the overall budget of that goes into servicing salaries and allowances of public service. So you
don't really think that the president can go as much as 60? You really don't think that is not a problem?
I'm telling you, I
understand totally what you're talking about. I'm saying in a moment where a lot of people are saying, show us an example of how you're going to cut costs. If you say we should tighten our belt, you should show from government. If we say that we needed to cut costs of governance or we need to trim down the size of government, the last president had 42 ministers. This president is having 48. Does that show any sign of understanding that there's a need to trim the size of government?
I think we are talking at cross purposes, Shio. What I'm telling you,
I'm the one asking the question. You are the one speaking to Nigeria.
I'm not telling you.
I'm
not telling you that the cost of governance, fundamental as it is not really implicated largely by the number of ministers. It's implicated largely by the overhead and the salary payment of MDAs, which takes the large chunk of resources. So if you want to talk about trimming size of governance, it's not about
what are the other examples you would like to
for instance now
how we can really practically cut costs of governance.
I'll give you an example. Ministry of Information. How many agencies are under Ministry of Information? When you look at the Ministry of Information, I think they have almost about 11 or 12 agencies with people drawing salaries, with overhead being given to them aside capital vote. We look at the Ministry of Information. Let us look at those agencies. Who are those? Which of those agencies have overlapping functions? Which of those agencies can cohabit together? Then you'll be able to talk about reduction of personnel and expenditure. The huge resources that goes to government expenditure is not what political appointee gets. So as at the time I was functioning at the state, for instance, in Osun, when I was commissioner in Osun, the salary bill of Osun was about 3.6 billion, and the entire political appointee gets less than 200 million or 250 million per month. So that even if you decide to scrap political appointee from the system, it does not really affect the bottom line as to the cost of governance. So what we should be probing, and what I believe our leader, our president, will do, is to look at the size and structure of the MDAs and see how we'll be able to create efficiency in terms of cost and delivery on the services for the people.
Senator, you look at the quality of the persons that are being appointed, and I guess you're getting reactions from an average Nigerians or Nigerians in general on the expectation, especially because of the pedigree and the history of Bola Ahmed Tinubu when he was governor. And someone would say has a knack of getting quality persons into government, and he has had that when he was governor, and the kind of people that he has around him. For those who are not pleased with the quality and the capacity, what do you say to them?
You see, democracy is about heterogeneity of ideas. Everybody have the benefits and the privilege to make criticism. But the question is this: the person that will take decision have certain facts that some other people who don't even have facts. So you cannot expect 48 people to be appointed from a pool of 180 million people and everybody to agree that all of them have been okay, or that even those 48 are okay. So people are bound to make criticism, either genuine or some born out of lack of information, some out of outright mischief. It is part of heterogeneity of democracies. But as far as I'm concerned, if you want to make criticism of those appointees, you pick them one by one and say why should they not be there, and why were they appointed? And the only person that can ask that is the president, and of course the National Assembly that has done the confirmation. For instance, will you say?
I don't agree. And the reason is the president is holding our office in trust for the people of Nigeria. Any action of the president, either even in appointment or even indeed, is doing it for as though Nigerians are doing it. The 200 million Nigerians cannot sit in that chair, and he's doing it in trust. So anything that he does, or any of the ministers, or even the senators does that, they are doing it at the expectations. And I'm not sure that Nigerians are wrong for having high expectations of the kind of persons or the capacity with the enormous blessings that God has given to people of Nigeria, and they're expecting that those who, even there are 50 of them or 60, they must be the best persons that you find in each of the state. And if they say they are disappointed in some of the crop of people that are in that cabinet, don't they have the right?
That's why I agree with you. There's heterogeneity of ideas, but the question is that by what parameter will you determine whether those ideas are not even that of minority?
Do you think that this is the best cabinet Nigeria could get?
That's the best. That's the best.
And Nigeria can get.
That's the best.
In every sector?
That's the best. Let me explain certain thing to you with respect, Eshion. You see, we have 200 million Nigerians, but only one person is vested with the executive powers by our constitution, whether out of wisdom or out of foolery. I wouldn't say that. But what I would say is that you cannot have 100 million or 200 million people taking decision. By voting for Ajibola Tinubu, we have given him the mandate to act for and on behalf of 200 million Nigerians. And that mandate is a trust, just to have said. So the trust is there that is acting according to his oath in the best interest of Nigeria by putting those 48 men and women to serve in his cabinet. And of course, he also has the prerogative by Section 5 of the Constitution and Section 151 to also appoint special advisor and some other persons to assist him in discharging those responsibilities. The barometer will be, at the end of the day, is whether he has been able to deliver on the promise of revamping our economy, on the promise of galvanizing food security in terms of development of the agricultural sector. Has he been able to, at the end of the day, affect positively infrastructure development in our country, rather than talking about one personnel or the other personnel? Even in this station, if people are to be appointed as a prefect, some other people appointed will have people who criticize them, and that is the beauty of democracy. And according to our Yoruba people, all of us cannot sleep and put our head in the same direction.
Where do you to go on this part of it? I'd like to get your view about the anger in the land about the state of the economy, the consequences and the pains left by the removal of few subsidies. Those who say, it's a good idea to remove subsidy. This debate has been on for several years, but perhaps it wasn't done the right way. That some people will argue. But how, as a leader of the APC, you guys, you and your friends and colleagues in the APC had promised Nigerians that it's going to be a renewal hope this time around after the last 8 years of President Buhari. But those of them who now buy a bag of rice in almost a double or triple price, they buy petrol in more than 4 times the price, they buy palm oil, red oil, and whatever kind of oil in more than 3 times they travel out, within the country in higher rates of the airfare. What do you tell them? That the renewed hope is not here yet. When will it come? Or what exactly would you be telling them tonight?
Yes, with respect, we must be very sincere with ourselves. When you want to carry a surgical operation, and any rebate always comes with pains. So we, as a party, sympathize with Nigerians who have to bear the pains of the need for us to recalibrate our economy. You will know that the subsidy regime has not only become a cesspool of corruption, but it has become a trap that if we don't remove it now, our country may go the way of Venezuela or the way of Argentina. And at the same time, the subsidy of the naira, that absence of floating of the naira, has affected genuine investment into the country. So we believe that, yes, it's very challenging now. We cannot close our eyes to that reality. But in the long run, our economy will be better for it. And I must quickly comment on what, you played that you said Pastor Bakare said, although I don't see him as a politician, and with respect to him, I don't see him as even competent to say what he has said. The fact that we are talking of palliative does not mean that we are not confronting the headlong of correcting the dysfunction and the imbalances in the economy. So we are both addressing the issue of palliative as a immediate step, and addressing the fundamental problem that is affecting access to necessary resources to carry out infrastructure, to galvanize our economy, and to turn our economic run in a way that will have economic prosperity for the Nigerian people. So we are not limiting our project to issue of palliative. So it's just being selective in what he has said. Then when he's also talking about, when he also talk about,
when you say Pastor Bakare does not have the competence, what do you mean? He's a citizen of the country. I
say competence in politics and what he's making comment about.
He's a citizen of the country.
He has idea. The fact that you have idea does not mean you have competence. He's entitled as a citizen. Like for instance now, I'm not an engineer. I don't have competence to make value proposition in engineering field, even though I'm a citizen of Nigeria. So the fact that he's a Nigerian does not mean that he has competence in making criticism that he's making.
But the question is, there is enormous expectation. People are suffering, and I hope your party are aware.
We have a 4-year mandate, and so by the grace of God,
before the 4 years, even before
the next 1 year, people will start seeing the benefit of the fundamental adjustment that is being made in the economy of our country.
I know you. Let's close this now in 30 seconds, if you may be able to respond this quickly to this question. I know you have taken part, like you said, in a lot of election processes for your party. The election tribunal is set to give its judgment. There are those who are saying that your party is already planning to engage in in a rerun election. Is that the case?
With respect, I'm not supposed to make comments on a matter that is sub judice, but since you have asked me, for my knowledge of electoral law in Nigeria, and for having read, the petitions and also being part of the proceedings, I would say that all the petitions against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu election, they are hopeless, and nobody needs to even, waste, time in dismissing same.